So can an algorithm actually have a mind of its own? I'm not talking about science fiction here. I mean, can it develop its own unique way of reasoning? That's the really provocative question at the heart of philosopher Luciana Parisi's work. And we're about to dive into how algorithms are evolving past being simple tools and starting to show us a strange and, frankly, a brand new kind of logic.
Okay, so here's the game plan. We're going to start with the old school way of designing things and see how that got totally flipped on its head. Then we'll poke a hole in that new method, revealing a major blind spot. After that, we'll get into the really wild stuff, the surprising role of randomness, and it all leads to this radical new idea of algorithmic reason. Let's jump in.
You know, at the center of this whole thing is this fundamental clash in how we think about design. On one hand, you've got top-down design. Just think of an architect's blueprint, where every single little detail is planned out from the very beginning. But then you have bottom-up design, which is way more organic. It's like growing a crystal. The final complex shape just emerges from a bunch of simple local rules. No master plan needed.
So let's kick things off with that first approach, the top-down model. This is the one we're probably all familiar with. Picture the architect as the all-powerful master planner, holding that grand blueprint.
The logic behind this is called deductive reasoning. It's classic top-down thinking. You start with the big idea, a set of universal rules, and you basically impose them on your materials. The grand concept decides the final shape, and the matter? Well, it just has to fall in line.
So in this world, everything flows from that one master plan. The algorithm's job is pretty straightforward here. It just runs simulations to confirm that the designer's brilliant idea is actually possible. The results are totally predictable, they're reliable, but you can see the issue, right? There's not a whole lot of room for any genuine surprise. But then, things started to change. Computation got way more powerful, and a pretty revolutionary shift completely turned this whole idea on its head. This new approach is all about inductive reasoning. It's bottom-up logic. So instead of forcing a design onto materials, designers started asking the materials themselves, hey, what can you do? They let the materials guide the entire process. This is what we call material computation. The simulation is driven by the real-world properties of the stuff itself. The inspiration for this is straight out of nature. Think evolution, or how a snowflake forms. Matter itself becomes what Parisi calls the motor of truth. The designer just sets up a digital sandbox, unleashes a bunch of simple digital agents with some basic rules, and then just hits play. And what grows out of those simple interactions can be these incredibly novel and complex solutions, designs a human would probably never even imagine. The whole focus shifts from the final object to the dynamic process of making it.
Now, this was a massive leap forward, for sure. But, and this is where Luciana Parisi's argument really kicks in, she says that in all our excitement about what matter could do, we kind of developed a critical blind spot.
And it brings up this crucial question. What if, by focusing so intensely on the physical world, we were actually missing the most fascinating thing about the algorithm itself?
Parisi puts it perfectly right here. Computation was basically becoming invisible. It was just a tool, a mere vehicle, to show off all the cool, complicated things that matter could do. It's like we were all staring at the puppet and completely ignoring the puppeteer pulling the string. The problem with that is pretty huge. We were so focused on physical materials that we forgot the algorithm has its own kind of materiality. You know, its abstract rules, its data structures, its logic. It's not just a mirror reflecting our world, it's a world all on its own.
And here is the twist. This is where it gets really interesting. The true nature of this algorithmic world isn't found in perfect, clean logic. Nope. It's found in something that seems like its total opposite. Fundamental, unavoidable randomness.
And look, this idea has been building for nearly a century. It really kicked off in 1931 when Kurt Gödel proved that any formal system of logic, any set of rules, will always have statements that are true, but that it can't prove. A few years later, Alan Turing made this more concrete by showing some problems are just fundamentally incomputable. Then in the 70s, Gregory Chaitin connected all these limits of logic directly to the idea of pure algorithmic randomness.
So what exactly is the incomputable? Well, think of it as a question that no set of rules, no matter how clever, can ever answer with a definite yes or no. For instance, imagine trying to write one program that could look at any other program and tell you for sure if it will eventually stop or just run forever. Turing proved that's impossible. That's an incomputable problem. It's a hard limit on what logic can ever know.
And this gets us right to the core of the argument. This randomness isn't a bug in the system that we need to fix, It's a feature. It's an intrinsic, unavoidable, and, this is the key, it's an intelligible part of what computation even is.
To make this a little more concrete, think about Chaitin's omega number. This is one single number, and it represents the exact probability that a randomly generated computer program will eventually stop. Now, the concept is something we can totally understand, but the digits of the number itself are pure, uncompressible randomness. You can never, ever predict the next digit. It's a perfect, mind-bending example of a deep truth that is also fundamentally random.
So, if algorithms are fundamentally built on this, creative randomness, what in the world does that mean for how they think? Well, Parisi gives us a whole new framework for understanding this.
To wrap our heads around this, we can borrow a tool from the philosopher A.N. Whitehead. He talked about two kinds of cause. First, there's efficient cause. That's easy. It's just dominoes falling. The past physically pushes the present forward. But then there's final cause, which is the opposite. It's not a push from the past, it's a pull from the future. It's a purpose, a goal that adds something new into the mix.
And this brings us to the big idea: speculative reason. It's not top-down, it's not bottom-up, it's a third way of thinking that can inject genuine, brand-new ideas into a system. It doesn't just follow the rules, it runs up against the unknown, and then it changes its own rules because of what it finds.
So how does an algorithm actually do this? Well, first, it confronts the incomputable, that wall of infinite randomness. But instead of just crashing, it actually absorbs that randomness and treats it like new information. It then turns it into a new experimental axiom, a new rule to play by. This injects a new sense of purpose, a final cause, into its own programming. And that allows it to generate solutions that were totally impossible under its original set of rules.
And here it is, the ultimate takeaway. Algorithms aren't just tools for simulating our reality anymore. They're actively building what Parisi calls a second nature, an entire algorithmic world with its own unique form of speculative reason. They are producing new truths, new axioms, about things that we don't even know exist yet.
Which, of course, leaves us with a final pretty fascinating question. If this new algorithmic reason is really emerging, if these systems are learning to think for themselves by embracing randomness and purpose, what new worlds, what new realities will they eventually design for us?